Hi folks, welcome to another Irish whiskey review with me, Murray Macaulay. First off, I have to apologise about the last one. I had to put it up, I had to take it back down again, not because of any controversy or anything bad. Not like some other reviewers who label the whole nation as terrorists and stuff. But no, we had to take it down because the sound went funny, and I've no idea why. All of this stuff is a bit of a mystery to me, which is why I normally rely on my mate Justin. That's why he takes care of all of this. The little fancy bit of equipment I use here, I'll let you in the secret. I don't really know how it works. And Justin keeps shouting at me, telling me that I don't know what I'm doing whenever I'm doing this. He's 100% right, but don't tell him. Don't let him in on that secret. You know, although I think he suspects. Now, let's take a wee drink. Parched throat. Now, any of you who have watched the show in the last couple of weeks would have watched our episode about the Takamine Whiskey, the Takamine process for producing whiskey, which we interviewed a guy from Honkaku Spirits. They're over in Japan, but they are based in New York. And people from the US of A. Now, if you didn't catch the show, do catch up with it. It's on the channel. It's an amazing process. It was first discovered or adopted back in the 19th century by a man called Takamine. And there was a touch of arson involved. Suspect arson. We can't be 100% sure, but we could probably. You don't need to be Miss Marple or Sherlock Holmes to figure out what went on there. But anyway, they were very kind. Sent us over a little miniature. Justin got one as well, and he polished this off and fairly sharp. But I'm actually going to pour a little bit more of this out. Now, I've literally only had a little smidgen of this, really just to accumulate my taste buds to it, if you like, and give myself pre-warning on some of these things. Now, anyone who didn't watch the show, Takamine Process, it uses koji, which is the national fungus of Japan, and they coat the barley in this fungus, then use yeast on top of that, and whenever they bring it out, they are heading towards 20% ABV just in their wort. So almost the same as you get of a stripping run in an ordinary whiskey distillery. They're getting that in their wort. And then it's double distilled. They distill it once, water it back down a little and distill it again. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with what koji is and what it does, if you've had soy sauce or sake, some other Japanese foodie type, that's the process that's used to make these products, and it gives that the quintessential Japanese flavour, umami, which is savoury. It gives soy sauce its flavour, and sake has that savoury note, so it's not sweet. Now, again, go on to your interview. We've released it as a podcast as well, full podcast. And really quite interesting. The whole process and what these guys are doing is really interesting too. I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now about how these days people's tastes have changed, that flavour drift. Now, I sold some bottles of Johnnie Walker from the 1960s to some guys so they could compare Johnnie Walker today with Johnnie Walker of old, and there's a huge difference, just a massive difference. Still have a couple of bottles, so if anybody wants to maybe get in touch with me, obviously taking into account postage, but I have a couple of miniature bottles, not miniature bottles, quarter bottles, so a quarter of a standard bottle that are still there. So yeah, so anybody's interested, just give me a message and let me know. Now, my son was down earlier on and he said Japanese food is probably his favourite food. And it certainly got a lovely style of its own. Again, very reliant on the koji method. Now, this whiskey is aged in bourbon casks and American oak. It's 8 years old, 40% ABV, and as I say, it's made using this old process that these guys have discovered and brought back again. Right, that's the colour of it. Now, this won a gold at the San Francisco Spirit Awards. I know sometimes we don't hold a huge amount of truck with award ceremonies, but they do serve a purpose, absolutely. And to get a gold with really your first offering, it's impressive in many ways. So what is it like? On the nose, quite different. Honeyed. There's definitely lots of barley there. It's a strange barley. It's got a malty quality to it, but it's not your typical malty quality. It's a sort of fresh note to it that the barley has. It feels similar, but slightly different. It's got a sweetness to it on the nose that feels slightly alien, just a little bit different than what you would normally get off a whiskey. There's like a sugariness to it that tastes like a sugared sweetie. You know, it's almost like something akin to what sugared ginger would be to ginger. It's kind of that sugary malt, but it's different. You know straight away that there's a slight difference here. And now it's been out of the bottle a little bit, that nose is developing a little bit. It's changing a little bit, and it's heading more towards that meaty taste that sometimes we've talked about before, where you get that slightly sweet meat taste, sweet meat nose. A little bit of black licorice, almost a little bit of black licorice there. Yeah, interesting nose, but very similar. It's a familiar nose, slightly different, okay, but it noses like a traditional whiskey. You wouldn't think it's much different than anything else. On the tongue, different. A little bit of heat, and it has that savoury quality to it. On the finish, sweetens up. It becomes that's very good. That's very good. Wow. Yeah. On the tongue, it has that umami quality. It definitely does. It has a totally different character than pretty much any other whiskey I've ever tasted, if I'm honest. On the nose, it's familiar. It feels something that you've had before. You might think there's just a little bit of difference, but maybe that's a difference in the blend and going into the single malt. When they blend up the single malts, it could be a little variation, and you go, there's a little strange note there. I'm not sure what it is. that starts out meaty. It starts out like almost like a mushroom quality to it. It's got meaty qualities. It's got meaty qualities that aren't really meat. The taste of it, there's lots and lots of barley there, but it is, again, it's that sweet barley. It's like crystalline barley. It's as you take it, it goes from that savoury, biscuity, meaty notes, and it starts to sweeten, and it finishes really well. For an 8-year-old whiskey, it's surprisingly good finish on it. Yeah, that is unusual. That it bounces around. It really does, and it's got a complexity to it that's probably because it's unfamiliar. That the complexity's there. Your brain's not used. Your brain that's preset to have this. This is really what these whiskies taste like. Okay, this type of whiskey, it's heavy, it's viscous, it's peaty, it's sweet, it's this, blah blah blah. And because this is different, it's got a complexity to it that you're not used to. That your brain is a little bit, hang on, that's not what that should. It's not what that's normally like. I have to say that's really good, in a way that is playable. You can work with that. You can talk about it. You like the story. I like the story. I like the guys that are doing it. That interview really well. Yeah, and you're going to want to play about with this. It literally has. It's not got a great mouthfeel, if I'm totally honest. It's at 40%. The mouthfeel's not that creamy, but that's not really the purpose of this. It goes in as this sort of weird savoury notes, lots of savoury notes, and then it just lifts and sweetens and gets sweeter and sweeter on the finish. Really, really interesting whiskey. It finishes really well for not having a great mouthfeel, not being that creamy and viscous. It's got a really nice mouthfeel to it, or a really nice finish to it. The mouthfeel is surprising because it's not that viscous, as I say. It comes through really well. Yeah. It's really interesting, and it's a bit of a puzzle for tasting because it's not like anything else, and for that reason it's getting a very high mark, because some people might not like this. That's fine, can't please everybody all the time, but when you're a connoisseur, or someone that enjoys a whiskey, or someone who likes new and interesting flavours, which is what we all should be, even if we don't necessarily like it, you should at least try it. And I would say this is a very different whiskey. You know that this is a very different whiskey. It's got that umami flavour. It's not overly sweet, but it sweetens up. And as it progresses in the follow-on, it develops that sweetness. Very subtle sweetness. Not tart, not saccharine sweet. Really, really good. I have to give it a mark. But there's not really anything else like it. So I'm going to give that 9 out of 10. If it had if it had a little bit more age to it, it might have more creaminess, and it would be better all round. So enjoy it. Catch us on a Saturday night, and thank you again for Takamine Spirit. Thank you very much for the Takamine whiskey. Take care.